Okay, so this is a little bit of a behind the scenes glimpse of not only how I record the podcast, but also how I have it routed from like an engineering perspective. It's actually pretty interesting. It's more complicated than you would think. So much so that I thought, people might actually be curious to know. And I doubt I have like 5 listeners. So it's not like I have people banging down my door or, blowing up my phone to make a tutorial on it. But I thought it was interesting enough. And also, I thought it would be cool to just go back through and dissect the way that everything's routed so that maybe I could catch something if it needs to be changed or whatever, or if anybody has any suggestions about how I could do anything differently or more efficiently, that's welcome too. So anyway, just a quick recap: the podcast that I do, not to not to blow my cover or anything, but it's a lot of different characters that I do the voices for. I hate to, rain on your parade, but yes, it is unfortunately right now it's just one person. I do all of the people in the studio. You can see over here to the left is the studio lines, and then I have a rotary phone. I might get a video of it or a picture or whatever and put it on here so you can see it. But I have these are the phone lines, and those are routed through this phone auxiliary, and then both of those are, I'm going to go back in detail over this, but both the studio lines and the phone lines are routed through the voice auxiliary, and then all of those are routed through the, that goes straight over here to the what we call the 2 bus. I'll explain more about that in a second. Hold on, let me rename this. Rule number 1, always label your tracks and auxiliaries because it just makes it easier for everybody, even if everybody is just you. God, I'm a loser. Anyway, so we got the studio lines over here, the phone lines right here. Those are all routed through the voice auxiliary. Once again, I'll explain more about why in a second. This is going to be, I'll just write city sound. Just so y'all can see what that is. And that's the background for the callers. And then this is the sound effects auxiliary that goes through, which goes to the 2 bus. Once again, I'll come back to that. And then this is any of the music that plays in the episode. So there will be intro music, which in this case is the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. And another reason I picked this episode, not only because it's one of my favorites, but because it has a bunch of different effects that I don't use a whole lot, or just not regularly. And then, and then it has these commercials right here that have already been mastered. Once again, I'm gonna expand on all of this. God, I suck at doing tutorials. This isn't so much of a tutorial as it is just kind of a peek behind the scenes to convey that it's not just 2 microphones. I mean, there's a whole complex setup. Me and my friend Forrest sat down for about an hour to route all this in a way that made sense. And he's really good, probably the best engineer that I know. And I kind of already, I mean, to be fair to me, it's not my strong suit, but I had it pretty much set up the way that it needed to be. I just needed him to come in and kind of tweak some of the settings, all these effects and stuff up here on the racks, which I'll explain more about. So over here we have these commercials. I'll go to the editing screen so you can see how this is set up. These commercials I have right here have already been mastered. So I have them just going straight to it bypasses the 2 bus. I'll put the 2 bus track up here. And, once again, I'm going to explain why. So let's just go through this. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and just so you can hear the beginning of the podcast to give you some sort of frame of reference, and then I'll come back and explain why you're hearing why you're hearing what you're hearing when you're hearing it, if that makes any sense. All right. Oh, that's my shit.
And we are live, coming to you straight out of the greatest city in the world, Austin, Texas. This is Talk Time Radio. I'm your co-host, Mr. Wacky Wade Wallaby. What up? And I'm here with your other co-host, Mr. Tyrone Jackson. What's going on, Tyrone?
All right. So first things first. The first two things that you hear. The first thing you hear is the music right here. I'm going to highlight that, and that is routed through the music auxiliary, so that it is being compressed along with the voice that's coming in, so that it doesn't peak. Now there the the studio mic is routed through the. It's not. See if I have it on low latency monitoring, so you can't really see. So you see how all these tracks are lighting up. Um, the studio, once again, is routed through the studio auxiliary, and that studio auxiliary is also routed through this extra auxiliary, the voice auxiliary, which has the. God damn it! The delay is kind of fucking me up, but I'll work through it for a second. The voice auxiliary is what has all the compression and kind of makes the voices louder. So then you can see that's routed through the 2 bus right here, which is normally over here when it doesn't have commercials that are already mastered at max volume. But we're going to put it back over here for now. Then that 2 bus has another limiter on it. Now this is sitting kind of low right now because I'm just talking, but when it has music and stuff, it sits way up here, and it just compresses everything and limits everything so that it's not peaking. I'll explain more here in a little bit. I know I'm all over the place, but come on, give me a break. There's a lot going on here. So, and I'm like the worst guy at explaining stuff like this. However, I do understand at least most of it. Now, on the studio mic, which is the main mic, and I should probably say this room is not the room that I record things in. I normally do that in a different room that's sound treated. There's really annoying echo in here, and it's driving me crazy. But just for the purposes of the tutorial, I'll go ahead and just plow through it. Now you can see this compressor right here is actually this isn't even a compressor. That's a noise gate. I'm sorry. So this noise gate, what it does is, let me see if I can. I'm not sure how this is going to work with the screen capture software, but I'll go ahead and try it. So if I take off low latency monitoring, it's going to allow all these plugins to activate or to be active. Now, so I take this off. You see how that gate is kicking in once I stop talking? It kicks on and it gets a little more silent. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Once again, I don't know how the screen capture software works, but it's, just to give you kind of the idea of what that's for. And that's basically just because it's not completely silent. There's a little bit of, I guess you would call it a noise floor, which is kind of the ambient sound that you don't ever really think of or acknowledge, I guess we kind of take for granted. If it was completely quiet, it'd be fucking weird. But what this noise gate does is allows me to get more of a professional sound so that when nobody's talking, you're not hearing like fuzz or whatever, just that ambient sound. If I ever need any of that, I can plug that in after. The most important thing is that you isolate each track or each line so that you can do whatever you want to in post. So studios mic 1 and 2 have all of the same settings as far as the noise gate goes. And then for phone 1 and 2, I think I have them a little bit different just because the mic that I use for the phone line is just a different mic. It needs some different adjustments. So, not to get ahead of myself, so these studio mic lines come in to the studio auxiliary right here. And, well, it'd probably be better if I mentioned how I record everything. So the way that it goes is like this. I have these two, when I'm in the actual room that I'm recording in, I'll do the studio mic, and then I'll jump to the phone mic. It's two separate lines, two separate inputs on my audio interface. One of them obviously is this studio mic, the SM7B, I believe this is, and then I have a rotary phone that's retrofitted with an XLR cable so that I can plug it into my interface. And I use an old-fashioned phone just because I like the sound. I like the kind of grainy color, the analog color that it gives the voice. Um, I could probably do that in post. I like doing it this way because I can do other stuff like rub it up against my shirt to make it sound like somebody's fumbling around with the phone, or, bang it up against the counter to make it sound like somebody dropped it. Just stuff, little things like that make it seem more authentic. So I'll do studio mic 1 and phone mic 1 at the same time. I'll swap back and forth, right? And then what I do to make it even more authentic is I'll go back over it and listen to it and have these two activated, studio mic 2 and phone mic 2. It's the same mic and the same phone mic. It's just I'm basically overdubbing it so that the conversations can overlap and people can interrupt each other just like a real conversation. You don't realize it, but people, even without interrupting, people talk over each other just a little bit, and my hero, Phil Hendry, he does it all live, which is incredible, but it's also, he's not able to add that authenticity factor. And I just prefer it just to not only be a little bit different than him, but also just to, like I said, make it a little more realistic. And not that I feel like I'm fooling anybody, like they don't know it's all me, but it's cool to, I don't know, it's cooler for me to listen to anyway when I have to proof listen to it, which I always do. It's cooler for me to listen to it if it's not robotic. It sounds kind of robotic when the conversations aren't overlapping. Next time you're having a conversation with somebody, just kind of think about that and just realize that even though you're not interrupting each other, your conversation is overlapping a little bit, even if it's just you kind of nodding in agreement, like, yeah, okay, while somebody else is talking. I mean, it's just, and I add little things like that. I mean, you can see if we go to the edit window, if we look at these, let me move this out of the way. So if we look at some of these tracks, I'll put this studio auxiliary down here. You can see that some of this stuff does overlap, which would be impossible for me to do. Studio 1 and phone 1 will never overlap. Let me go to, you see there right here is a good example. Let me just play it and see what it says. Even consider myself close to being your biggest fan. You have a lot of fans, man.
Yeah, he does.
I know, right? But I was just gonna say, maybe you could come by my house later and I'll give you a little massage or something.
Nigga,
What do you mean? What? No, a massage? No.
Want me to dig my toes into your neck a little?
What?
I can see you got a little crick.
What?
Hey, man, this motherfucker's weird, dog. Nigga creepy.
So what you're hearing right there is obviously studio mic 1, what's going on there, and once again, studio mic 1 and phone 1 will never overlap. You can see right here, and even right here. Well, shit, I should probably. Even right here, there was a little bleed over on there from when I had both mics live. And go ahead and delete that just because I'm OCD. But for the most part, you'll never see. You might see a little bit of bleed over. I've edited this one, so there's not a whole lot to be seen. But once again, phone 1 and studio 1 and phone 1 will never overlap. The dialogue will never overlap because I'm doing them at the same time, and I can only talk into one mic at a time. So then what I'll do is I'll go back with studio. Let's see here. With studio mic 2 and phone mic 2 armed or live, and then I'll just kind of overdub it and just add in the little intricacies that make the conversation seem more realistic. And I should probably mention this particular episode has some modulation that was done in post, and that's for the character Alvin and the Chickmunks, or in this case, Alvin the ghetto rapper. He rebranded himself. Long story, but so I basically took one of the phone lines and I had to separate it. Let me just zoom out right here. I had to separate it. You see this Alvin track right here. All of this I had to separate, and this was on the phone lines or whichever mic. I think in this case I recorded it on the studio mic just so it didn't have the static of the phone mic, because once I modulated it which I did. You can hear it. The voice is all high.
Say, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, I'm doing good and everything. You know, the record sounds.
So, you know, to get that Alvin and the Chipmunk effect, I had to modulate my actual voice. And, you know, some different ones I'll do that, like the voice of God or the voice of Satan or just a couple of other characters. God, I'm a fucking psycho. Either way, you know, some certain characters, I like to modulate their voice, which is another thing that Phil Henry doesn't do. He does it all live with no effects. He does little tricks to where he'll go off to the side to get some different tone, you know. I mean, it's just a little bit different. And even though he's doing a different voice, adding that, you know, off to the side effect gives it a little different, just a little bit of different tone. You get some more room noise or whatever it is. It's kind of hard to explain, but in this case, I modulated one of the tracks so that it has that high voice, because I can't make my voice that high. I've got some range, but not that much. And so just going back, I'll do studio one and phone one at the same time. They'll never overlap. And then studio two and phone two will never overlap, but will often overlap with those two just so that the conversation seems real. And then I'll usually, like in this case, I had to go back and edit it to where, and modulate it to where I had to isolate Alvin's track and then modulate it to make it high. So either way, just kind of moving on. I apologize, this is all over the place. So studio auxiliary. Let me just put that right here. So what do we got right here? So Forrest came in and did some low end cutting, just because you don't really, even though I have the low cut on, or I have the low end off on the mic itself. He wanted to come in and do some low end cutting in an EQ, and then it looks like he did a little notching out here also. That's just him, you know, having a really good ear and just being way better than me at engineering. Now this compressor is just to kind of tame the volume of my voice so that it's even once it goes into the voice auxiliary, which is what has the boosting. I'll get to that in a second. The de-esser is obviously, I mean, it's it takes the psst sound, like the lisps or whatever, the whistles, you know, that sound. It somehow detects that. I don't know exactly how it works. It somehow detects that frequency and kind of cuts out once you, let me see if I can get that thing to work. So when I talk and I say, you see how it kicks in right there? It's kind of cool. So every S sound that I make activates that, and that's how you get less of that annoying S sound, and it just sounds more professional. So anyway, moving on to the phone. Once again, we got a noise gate right there. It's on right now because it's not being fed a signal. Now, so with Alvin's track, I took the de-esser off because it was just a little bit annoying. And I did some EQing to make it seem like he's on the phone. Yeah, that's right, because I didn't record Alvin's track on the phone mic, because once you modulate it, it gets really muddy, I guess would be the word, just distorted. And I wanted to get a nice crisp, you know, vocal to modulate after. You want to do as much as you can in post. So with this one, I did some cutting and some boosting, maybe, or not really, maybe a little boost right here. If Forrest sees this, fucking don't kill me. I think I did it kind of right. I don't know. But either way, if he were to see it, he'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? So, and then once again, we got the expander gate on this one. This is kind of a weird situation, but it's important because, you know, different episodes call for different things. Different characters require different amounts of attention to the modulation. So that is routed through a phone auxiliary, and you can see we have a sharp cut higher than the low cut on, let's see, how do you get these? Yeah, so that's the studio low end cut, and this is the that's the phone low end. You see how it's sharper? So studio low cut, phone low cut. And then another compressor, just like with the other auxiliary line, and then another de-esser. Now those go through the voice line. This is what really boosts them. So we're gaining it up by a couple. This is the compressor. We're gaining it up a couple decibels, and just kind of, just boosting it so it has so it's a little bit louder, so that whenever it goes into the final compression, it's all getting pushed up at the same level. This will make more sense in a second. And then this is a limiter, once again, to just kind of do the same thing. This is to tame it a little bit while also boosting the quieter parts, and taming the loud parts. And then this is basically just boosting everything equally, so that it's, at a fairly consistent level once it goes into the final compressor. Once again, I apologize, all over the place. So next is the city sound effect that you can see right here, goes as long as whoever is on the phone. Each line usually gets their own background, but if it's, a couple lines at a time, usually I'll just have background effects for one, so that it's not, the background noise isn't too loud. Usually there's a couple different background sound effects, but in this case there's just one, which is a city sound effect. Let's see if we can solo this bad boy out so you can hear it. Oh wait. Yeah, so that's Alvin talking. And then here's Alvin talking again. So it's just to kind of give it that illusion of, somebody being outside while they're talking on the phone. It's really fun for me. I'm a dork though. So on that one, I have an EQ, and it looks like I cut the low end. Once again, just because it's supposed to give the illusion of coming through a phone receiver, which doesn't pick up very much low end, if any at all. Now, that is routed through the sound effects. Why do I have it cut right there? Yeah, I guess I double cut it. Maybe that's a little overkill, but once again, I'm learning as I go. So, once again, the studio mics go through the studio auxiliary. The phone mics go through the phone auxiliary, and then both the studio and the phone auxiliaries go through the voice auxiliary, which bypasses everything and goes to the 2-bus, which is where everything kind of meets and gets compressed and limited together. Now these 3 tracks in here, this is a unique episode because they actually have a freestyle contest. I'm fucking insane. Anyway, they actually have a freestyle contest in the middle of the episode. So whenever you have music and voices going at the same time, you need to be sure that they're being compressed together so that you're not peaking. And it gets all distorted when you peak, and you just have a shitty sound. So there's a few different things going on here. At the beginning of the episode, there's applause. Let me play that real quick. And that's playing at the same time as the music. So once again, they need to be compressed together. It's very important.
Follow me. Whoa now. And I'm here with your other co-host, Mr. Tyrone Jackson. What's going on, Tyrone?
What's good,
So you're about
man?
to hear the
And last but most
about to hear
definitely
the
not
applause
least, your
coming in.
host, Mr. Tommy Shenanigans.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. So if left untreated, the applause mixed with the music, mixed with the voice that's coming over it would just be too much. So it's very important that it's all routed and compressed. It's routed the same way, or it's routed in a specific way and compressed together, and limited together. So those are all going through the through the music auxiliary, and then that is going to the 2-bus, where once again it's all compressed together. Now I have these going through here so that I can control them with this knob. Hold on, there's something missing here. Is there? No? Okay. Maybe not. Maybe I'm fucking making shit up. I thought it had its own compressor, but once again, Forrest did all this, or he did most of it, so however he says it should be, I will just take his word for it. Now, you can see these 4 channels right here go straight to the master auxiliary. And the reason for that is that they're already, if I go down, if you look at these closely, you'll see that they're louder than everything else because they're already mastered. These tracks are already mastered. I'll go ahead and play it for you so you can know what I'm talking about. They're just fake commercials that I did.
This Sunday, come down to Mega Church so we can take all of your hard-earned money and...
So you can see how loud it is already, and it just doesn't need to be treated anymore. So that's why it bypasses all the channels and goes straight to the master. It doesn't need to be limited. It doesn't need to be gained up or down. It's already mastered where it needs to be, so it bypasses everything. I figured that out myself. Forrest would be pretty proud of me if you saw this. But anyway, just to kind of recap, I know that was all over the place, and I apologize once again. It's just I have never done this before, so I'm just kind of doing this off the top. Studios goes through the studio auxiliary, phones go through the phone auxiliary, the studio and the phone auxiliary go through the voice auxiliary. The voice auxiliary skips everything and goes through the 2-bus where everything is compressed together. The city sound effects and any other sound effects, like sometimes like the person will get struck, the caller will get struck by lightning or attacked by a wolf. You'd have to share, or you'd have to subscribe to the show to see that or listen to that or hear that or whatever. So feel free to subscribe. So any sound effects like that, like background noise from the callers or any other sound effects, will have to go through this sound effects thing, so they get treated and EQ'd to sound the way it would actually sound if it was coming through a phone receiver. Then any music that's being played not in the background coming through the phone receiver. So any sound effects like the applause or the music that he freestyles to, or the intro music, goes through the music auxiliary, which then goes through the 2-bus and gets compressed with everything. Now, everything else, anything that's already mastered, like commercials in this case, all fake commercials, obviously, that I made myself, they're already mastered, so they bypass everything and they don't overlap with anything so that it's not peaking. So anyways, thank you for tuning in, and sorry if I bored you.